Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining in. We're going to start in just a minute. We see people starting to join in the room. So give it about 60 seconds or so. And while we're waiting, you'll see there is a chat screen on the right side of your screen. If everyone wants to type in, tell us where you're coming in, where you're joining us from. We'll see how far across the globe this audience is coming from. We got East Coast, West Coast, Florida, Texas, Chicago. So it looks like we're all the way across. Hey, Colorado, I'm in Colorado. Boston, Philippines. So far, Philippines is the farthest. Looks like we got a good spread across the United States. We got Canada represented.
Very cool to see. If you just joined in the last 10 seconds, we're going to get started in just a moment. We're just giving you another second to join the session, and feel free to say hi in the chat. Patrick's going to explain how we'll use the chat throughout the webinar today, and let us know where you're tuning in from.
Snowy St. Paul. We are just talking about snow. There's snow in Colorado. There's snow in Chicago. Doesn't surprise me there is in Minnesota too. I don't imagine there's snow in Austin, Texas, though. All right, great. Looks like we got quite a few people tuned in. So why don't we get things started? So hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for a webinar with Spark Hire in Greenhouse. And this webinar is going to be about investing in your talent acquisition strategies and solutions. So today's webinar is scheduled for an hour, but it'll likely be about 30 to 45 minutes long. And then we'll also have some time for Q&A at the end. So please, if you have any questions throughout, you can leave those questions in the chat, and we'll get those answered later on in the session. And I want you all to know that we'll also be emailing out a recording of this webinar for everyone to watch later on, or for those who weren't able to join as well. So my name is Patrick O'Connell, and I am the product marketing specialist at Spark Hire. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Spark Hire, we are a video interview platform that's used by over 6,000 organizations in over 100 countries. Our one-way video interviews have helped organizations make their interview process 5 to 7 times faster, while also making the process a lot more collaborative too. Spark Hire provides an integration with Greenhouse so that users can leverage the main features of Spark Hire from within Greenhouse's applicant tracking system to help them make the right hires faster. And Greenhouse provides hiring software for people-first companies. More than 7,000 organizations use Greenhouse hiring software platform to improve all aspects of their hiring, helping them to attract their top talent. So we've collaborated with Greenhouse on this webinar to help provide some educational and actionable content that will show you how to best understand the value of talent acquisition teams, and hopefully show you some tools and strategies that you can use to develop an efficient and effective recruiting process. So I'm happy to introduce today's panelists. We have Spark Hire's own Jeremy Tolan, who is the partnerships manager. We have Maria Culbertson, senior team manager of talent acquisition at Greenhouse. And we have guest speaker Melanie Runyon, who's the director of recruiting and talent acquisition at AWL. So today we're going to be talking about workers who are often the unsung heroes of their organizations, the recruiters and talent acquisition professionals. Just like every other position that contributes to the success of an organization, we at Spark Hire and Greenhouse believe that these hardworking professionals should be both celebrated and empowered in order to do their jobs as effectively as possible. To start off today's conversation, I want to hear directly from our panelists really what motivates them and keeps them coming back for more. Maria, I'd love to start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about your role and what do you find fulfilling about working in talent acquisition?
Yeah, sure thing. So I currently serve as the Senior Manager of Talent Planning and Acquisition at Greenhouse Software. So I oversee a team of recruiters that support our sales and marketing verticals, as well as overseeing our leadership or our executive recruiting function here. When I think about what I find the most fulfilling about working in TA, it's all about the positive impact that we as TA professionals get to make on the trajectory of a person's career and ultimately of their life. When people decide to make a career change, no matter how big, no matter how small, that's a new chapter in their stories and can make all the difference in their own personal well-being and the well-being of their family. So every application that we're receiving represents a job seeker who's looking for an opportunity to unlock their full potential within the workplace. And we get to basically be that bridge between where they are now and where they envision themselves being able to best realize their own human potential in the workplace. So that's pretty big.
Yeah, that's excellent. Great answer, Maria. And now, Melanie, I want to give you a chance to answer the same question too. What is it about talent acquisition in your role that keeps you excited each day?
What I love about it in my role is I get to manage and constantly evolve a group of 100% in-house recruiters and talent acquisition coordinators. So at AWL, we do all of our own recruiting. We don't generally use third-party services, which is great because who knows the culture better than we do, right? And it gives you the opportunity to connect with all kinds of different types of backgrounds, personalities, career levels. Nobody on the team is limited. And being able to place people, to Maria's point, in their dream jobs, or maybe it's even just a job that they just need for right now. We kind of have that great fit for everybody. During the pandemic was a great example. When everybody else was shutting down, our hiring surged. We got to place so many people in remote opportunities that we're still offering today, some still fully remote and some in the hybrid capacities. But it's just satisfying to know that when people were at their most desperate place, that you can give them that opportunity. But I'd say even above that, it's looking for that underdog, that person that so many other people have passed on, and getting them thinking about what their next step should be, or just giving them a little bit of guidance and maybe get them thinking about a position that they never even thought about before. I find that, usually those underdogs are the ones that stay the longest, learn the most, and, really give their all.
Yeah, that's awesome. You get to be that person that helps those people along. So thank you, Melanie. Jeremy, while you're not directly in a TA role yourself, I know that you have worked with countless organizations in recruiting the teams to help them optimize their processes and get them the best tools possible. So having worked with so many different teams and industries, have you found that having a strong talent acquisition strategy is crucial to the success of a business? And if so, why?
Yeah, the short answer is yes, definitely. Having a strong talent acquisition strategy is absolutely crucial to the success of a business. That could be for a lot of reasons, mainly because it's going to help drive revenue for your organization by hiring the right people for the right roles at the right times. That's going to set you up so that you can achieve your organization's revenue goals. But it's also going to help lower the costs that are related to having empty seats and maybe deploying resources to fill positions and onboard new team members due to turnover. I think we all know the type of investment that it takes to the candidate not only through the hiring process, but actually onboarded, trained, and acclimated within the organization. And I think what a lot of people find is that your employees end up being way more satisfied and have opportunities to continue to grow in your organization if you do have a sound talent acquisition strategy in place. So definitely crucial to the success of a business for a lot of reasons, even beyond what I just mentioned. But I'm excited to be part of the conversation today, and thanks everyone for joining the webinar today.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeremy. Now, Maria and Melanie, I'd like to hear about your respective experiences too. Melanie, do you want to tell us about why your TA strategy is a crucial part of your success? And then we'll kick it over to Maria after that.
Yeah, a lot of to Jeremy's point, a structured strategy is important because you're obviously looking to fill the perfect profile in the shortest period of time, because obviously those are seats that we need to get filled ASAP. So you need to know exactly what you're looking for and have a predefined process in place on how you're going to get there. so that once you're handed over that job description and that profile description, you're not spending time figuring out how you're going to find those people. You already know exactly how you're going to get there, and it gives you more time for networking, conducting those phone interviews, screens, assessments, whatever is involved in your process, just that much quicker. For us, as soon as we have job description in hand, it's already posted same day. And then you're meeting with the hiring managers so you can start building that pipeline. But also, as Jeremy said earlier, money, right? With a solid strategy, you can save thousands of dollars of your recruiting budget. And that's something I experienced myself by better evolving our team, having better processes. We've saved a lot of money this year and just being smarter about our ads, our job descriptions, and how we communicate with talent out there. So definitely important just to get it done quickly, efficiently, and save yourself a lot of money. Costs a lot of money to hire new hires. Last thing you want to do is have to backfill them in 30 days.
Yeah, it's a great answer. And it sounds like you're trying to avoid having to reinvent the wheel every time you have a new opening. So that structure helps you get there efficiently. And how about you, Maria? What works for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, totally agreed with everything that Jeremy and Melanie just shared. A company's most valuable asset is its human capital. So it doesn't matter how strong your vision is. It doesn't matter how fail-proof your strategy is. Just like Jeremy said, if you don't have the right people in the right roles on the right teams at the right times, you're not going to win. So that's what the TA function is all about. And there's ways that you can do it effectively, ways that you can actually do it so effectively that you make hiring your company's competitive advantage. And then there's ways without a strategy that you can do it really badly. So you can not use data and drive really ineffective processes. You can ultimately, lose out on the talent that you need in seat and have to push back timelines for reaching your business objectives. And worst of all, just like Melanie said, you can make the wrong hiring decisions, right? And then you're just in this like rinse and repeat cycle of trying to fill the seat, wasting time, wasting money. So not having a sound talent acquisition strategy in place, to me, really feels like just spinning your wheels, remaining in the same place, wasting energy and resources. So super crucial.
Yeah, all excellent points. So clearly from each of you, we just learned that having a solid TA strategy is something not to be overlooked, as they really can make or break the success and growth of your organization. Now, I'm sure you want your processes to be repeatable and measurable. So I want to hear from each of you about how you quantify TA contributions to your company. So what are some of the metrics used to evaluate and really demonstrate the productivity in your organizations? So Melanie, would you like to take this question first?
Sure. And this is always a tricky one, right? Especially if you're in a very sales heavy organization. Revenue is always the only topic anybody cares about, but everything starts with us, right? So people mean if there's no people, there's nobody to generate that revenue. So the way that I try to quantify that with us is to bring in quality hires, just like we've been talking about, and protect that retention. The longer they're staying around, the less you're costing the company overall, and the better production that they're going to churn out once they're onboarded. So the goal is really to have them stick around for as long as possible. To get us there, though, I'm looking at things like metrics such as time to hire, the offer acceptance rate, find out what's going on there if we're seeing a drop off of an actual acceptance of offers, the cost per hire, quality per hire. And I can't stress this enough, spend time on the analytics, sourcing analytics specifically, find out which sources are your top performers, and the ones that aren't, stop using them. Just because they're popular or another company that uses them doesn't mean it's a great fit for you. So I spend a lot of time on that. And then also spend time on your pipeline history, getting to know the ratio of interviews it actually takes to get to and hire. That's important because that's what helps you give hiring managers reasonable fill expectation times, right? Sure, I can get this done for you in 2 weeks, or be realistic and say, this is really a unicorn you're looking for. I'm going to say it's going to probably take us 90 days minimum. And this is something that Greenhouse does especially well, is having those reporting analytics available, that pipeline history that you can just hop in on at a job level to give you that deeper insight.
Yeah, I'm sure having those managed expectations between recruiting and hiring managers, that can be a big deal about being on the same page and being able to demonstrate based on your history of this is going to be what to expect, how long it should take based on your criteria. So that's really important. Maria, how about you? How do you go about measuring the productivity of your team?
Yeah, absolutely. When I think about productivity, I agree with a lot of what Melanie shared. The things like time to fill, sourcing analytics and metrics, pass-through rates, and pipeline history reports, especially from Greenhouse. Those are our guiding lights as well. I want to double click though, there's that ever elusive quality of hire. I saw a question from Ashley in the chat on this. There's not a standard way to quantify this. I think every single person in TA wishes there was. I'll say here at Greenhouse, where it's maybe a bit of a rudimentary approach to start, but we're working to try to better understand that by using the integration of our Greenhouse recruiting product with our Greenhouse onboarding product to ensure that new hires who then become employees track towards their 90-day goals. So looking at taking the data of their 90-day goals from Greenhouse recruiting, dropping it into Greenhouse onboarding, and then assessing point blank, are these folks meeting their 90-day goals or not at the 90-day mark? So looking at that. Also, just something I'd want to call out too, if you believe that diversity within your organization is key to your success, and spoiler alert here, it is, that is something that you can also track TA team efforts towards goals within the diversity space. So if your company is one that has set forth workforce diversity goals here at Greenhouse, we do have annual goals published on our website for that. You can see how your TA team's efforts are supporting that. So, here at Greenhouse, we don't have metrics around, like, let's say the demographic makeup of our pipeline or hires. That can lead you down the slippery slope of assumed identity, but we can track our team-wide efforts towards diversifying our pipelines and teams through their sourcing efforts. So some kind of unique metrics that we look at here on the Greenhouse TA team is something called diversity source screens and diversity sourced on-sites, meaning we're looking to see what percentage of our initial screens come from our own diversity sourcing efforts, and then later on in the pipeline, what percentage of our on-sites also come from those diversity sourced efforts, both at an individual contributor and at a manager level. So that's a way too that you can see how productive is your TA team being and helping strive towards those really important goals.
Yeah, so it sounds like if you are using those 90-day goals, you're an integral part of working with that hiring manager with those teams to be reflecting back. And so you have to be working together to make sure you have those metrics available so you can all understand how it's affecting the whole business. So great answers, Maria. Jeremy, any other types of evaluations that you find valuable in demonstrating the TA contributions?
I mean, I think Maria and Melanie did a really good job on hitting on the most important ones. So I largely agree with all they said. I think one thing in particular that you can hone in on also is we talked a little bit about retention, right? And reducing turnover. So something in particular too might be first year attrition that you want to pay close attention to, especially in the circumstance we've seen the last few years where employees have been resigning record numbers. I think paying attention to something like first year attrition would also be particularly helpful too. But other than that, I think you guys went really well and really hit on all the most important metrics that you should be focused on.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeremy. All right, on to the next slide here. So just like any other department, whether it's sales or customer success, talent acquisition teams need to keep up with the trends and strategies based on what they learned from the months and years before. So as we are heading into 2023 shortly, I want to know what talent acquisition strategies you'd all be recommending adopting for this upcoming year. So I'll start with Maria. What do you think is going to help TAs be successful in this year ahead?
Yeah, sure thing. So I've got two things that come to mind here. The first one, going into 2023, something that's really top of mind for us here at Greenhouse is focusing on developing a strong internal mobility strategy. So as companies continue to scale, the likelihood of finding talent within the walls of your own organization grows significantly. You have entire talent pools of candidates in hand fully bought into your mission and ramped on your company. So why not go there first? And in doing so, create growth opportunities for your employees and contribute to your retention strategy. It's a win-win. So an effective internal mobility strategy, of course, takes the partnership of your talent management teams, and it's really imperative to collaborate with those TM teams to ensure that you have clear growth paths for your employees and that conversations about growth, whether that be vertical up within the org itself or diagonal, meaning going outside of your team and into other teams across the organization, make sure those conversations about growth are happening often and always. So companies in 2023 are really going to want to be focused on things like nurturing internal talent, investing in succession planning strategies, maybe even consider devoting some of your own team's bandwidth to having someone specifically focused on internal mobility. Maybe you hire them from your own internal TA team talent pool. How very meta. But from a TA standpoint, you want to make sure that those internal processes are not taking a backseat to your external processes. Essentially, you want to strive for and measure the effectiveness of your internal searches with the same rigor that you apply to your external searches. The other thing that comes to mind for me as well is making sure that when you're thinking about candidate experience, that it's a reflection or a conduit of your company's culture. Hopefully I don't have to tell anyone here on the call that upholding an excellent candidate experience is crucial for success, especially in the competitiveness of this market, as we've all seen. But I think we're going to see a shift in 2023 where making sure that culture is a big at the forefront of folks' minds in the candidate experience. I think that's the shift we're going to see because culture is becoming an ever more important part of a candidate's decision-making factors. The dust has really started to settle from us being in this remote and hybrid world. I think the past 2 years have been all about proving that, yes, we can be productive in a remote world. We've done that as a collective whole now, almost to a fault, and now candidates are really looking for an opportunity to join a company where they can still maintain culture. So a company's competitive advantage really lies in their ability to have their employees feel like they belong and that they're part of a community, whether that's, reporting in from headquarters or from a remote mountain in Wyoming. So in whatever ways that you can infuse your company culture into your candidate experience, you should.
Yeah, I know that one all too well, Maria, working remotely from the mountains of Colorado, based out of Chicago. So yes, it makes a huge difference in making sure that culture mentality gets infused into the search process. Jeremy, what else have you heard about organizations are going to be doing in 2023 to plan their TA strategies for success?
Yeah, so definitely agree with Maria on placing that emphasis on the internal mobility strategy and how you're incorporating your company culture throughout your hiring process. And then also on top of that, really just focusing on a virtual hiring process that favors the candidate experience in general. And a lot of that might have to do with focusing on how are you personalizing your communication with candidates. Something that I'm a big proponent of that a lot of the organizations that are using SparkHire find really beneficial too is incorporating videos in their email communication with candidates, because it's a lot more engaging and it can help you tell that story about your culture and kind of give candidates a chance to almost like virtually meet different members of your team throughout your hiring process. As a few examples of how you can incorporate videos in your communication with candidates, let's say, for example, if a candidate applies to your open role, you've determined to advance them to the next step of your hiring process. When you send them an email to let them know about next steps, you can include a video to help congratulate them on making it to the next step of the process. You can explain in that video what they should expect for the rest of your hiring process, and that could help get them engaged right out of the gate, basically. Another example might be a little later on in your hiring process when you're ready to invite a candidate to a more final round interview. When you send them an email that helps schedule that interview, you can include a video that is what I would call an employee testimonial, where you pretty much ask a member of your organization to record a quick video of themselves, explaining why they love working at your organization, what they like about their role in particular. And those are going to be most impactful when you're sharing employee testimonials of an employee that's in the same role that the candidate's being recruited for, because what better way to learn about it and just get excited about the role than hearing about it firsthand from someone that actually does it. So including those employee testimonial type videos in your emails could be really effective too. And then another example I could give too is near the end of your hiring process, when you're ready to send an official offer and an email to a candidate, to help keep the engagement and excitement really high, you can also include a video in that email that's going to reiterate why you think that candidate's going to be such a great fit, how they're going to be able to contribute to your organization. You could also maybe even consider including quick video intros from members of the team they'd be joining, so they have a chance to kind of see what the team is like, almost feel like they met and were being involved with the team before they even have accepted their offer. And I think that's a good way to increase engagement throughout your hiring process and hopefully help increase things like offer acceptance rate, like we were talking about a moment ago. Other strategies too that I think organizations are really focused on as we're approaching the new year is just getting candidates through your hiring process as fast as possible so you don't miss out on any top candidates, right? Because I think you're really setting yourself up to eventually have that candidate sign that offer and land your very best candidates if you're the first one to get that offer in front of them versus other organizations that might be recruiting them that they're interviewing for. On top of that, I'm going to talk about like the cost of having an empty seat at your organization. And the moment that you put your job ad out there, or even days before that, you're starting to feel the impact of not having that seat filled and having that empty. So all the weeks or even months that go by that no one is performing in that role can have a really poor impact on your organization. So making sure that you're getting candidates through your hiring process as fast as possible, that's just another reason why that's so important. And so the main way that SparkHire is helping organizations do that right now is through our one-way video interviews, where they can give candidates an opportunity to respond to interview questions whenever it's convenient for them. And that way they don't even have to commute or travel for just a preliminary interview. And what we've seen is that on average, the companies that are using SparkHire's one-way interviews, they've made their preliminary interview process 5 to 7 times faster than it was before. And they're also finding that it's the best way to ensure that they're providing candidates with faster response times as far as decisions about next steps. So that goes a long way in improving the candidate experience too, making sure that you're following up with candidates in a reasonable amount of time. And then on top of this, another thing that I'd recommend really placing an emphasis on is thinking about which tasks that you're going to be able to automate to help get your candidates through your hiring process faster so that you can follow up with them about next steps faster and ultimately get an offer out to them before any other organization could.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing you say, Jeremy, it sounds like for 2023, what we care about a lot is being at that nexus of having a great candidate experience because they have a lot more power in the job seeking market right now and being able to do it very quickly and efficiently. So those two main points of things we were really driving home. Melanie, any other thoughts you'd like to share with the audience about 2023 strategies you're looking forward to using?
Yeah, if anything, the only thing we've learned in the last few years is that we have to remain agile, right? Nothing's the same as it was a few years ago, and it probably won't be the same in 2 months from now. So I'd say for 2023, there's probably 3 big things that I'm looking out for, one of which being proactive recruiting. What we're seeing right now are a lot of layoffs happening. People are going on hiring freezes with no end date. When is that going to start back up? And a lot of mistakes that I think a lot of people make is to suspend all of their recruiting and TA efforts, and that's a mistake. You should spend that time proactively recruiting, keep your networking up, and use your past experience to predict which positions will typically open up first or where we historically seen the most backfill needs, so that by the time your hiring manager comes to you, you already have a pipeline ready to go. And then you can use all of those established processes that you've already got down and the technology you've already got working and have them hired, within a week if possible. So, proactive recruiting is a big one on our agenda. Second to that is employer branding. And this touches a lot of what everybody talked about on the call today is, you have to sell and protect your company culture. And I think we don't spend enough time on employer branding. It's a long-term investment. People want to see those employer testimonials, those employee testimonials like Jeremy was talking about. They want to see how you're spending margarita day in the office or how you're engaging with your remote employees. They want to see all of that. And you have to think like a marketer. We're talking to an audience who wants to receive that information the same way they do everything else, right? Social media. So it needs to be short, it needs to be engaging, simple, entertaining. It needs to be one scroll only. If they have to scroll 3-4 times to read that job description, you've already lost them. So, thinking like a true digital marketer, even when you're creating job and posting job descriptions, we're in that swipe left, swipe right era. So you have a very small window to capture their attention. So taking advantage of that and putting your marketer's hat on is a great way, something we're also thinking about. And then lastly, what I like everybody else was saying is protect your culture. You have to, that's your biggest selling point, right? You want to get them not interested in just the job. You want them interested in you as a company, just for, even if they're passively searching for a job. You want them thinking about you when it comes time, when they're ready to make a big move.
Yeah, I like that. So you're talking about you need to have that short-term agility, but have the long-term plan that's sustainable and not just reactionary. So all excellent points. So we've just heard about some of the leading strategies going to the next year, but there are some strategies that tend to be more evergreen and really can't afford to be overlooked. So Jeremy, I'm going to start with you. If you had to pick, what are some of the TA strategies that companies just simply cannot afford to cut corners on, and they really must be factored into their budgets?
Yeah, thanks. I think this kind of builds upon some of the things that I was saying earlier, but I think these most important strategies are the ones that are aiming to improve your speed to hire, but also improving your quality of hires too. So I talked a moment ago about how organizations are using Spark Hire's one-way interviews, and it's helping them make their screening process at least 5 times faster. A big part of that is that they're able to avoid scheduling challenges for preliminary interview with candidates who might already have existing jobs. On top of that, it's only taking them a few minutes to review the recording of a video interview to make a really informed decision about next steps for the candidate versus having to connect with the candidate for at least 20 minutes for a preliminary interview that usually isn't that revealing if you're just looking at a resume or just into a candidate over the phone. And on top of this too, any hiring stakeholder that's going to be involved throughout your hiring process, they're going to be able to collaborate a lot more effective around video interview recordings to help them build more context for their final interviews. And by doing your preliminary interviews this way, it's going to help standardize your process, which is going to make it quicker, easier for a member of your hiring team to make decisions about next step of candidates. Something else to recommend that's really going to help you improve your need to hire and just make sure that you're not sacrificing your quality of hires too, is creating what I call a hiring LA with your team. SLA, like a service level agreement, but really it's like internal agreement between your different hiring team members. And I think it's particularly critical in a virtual environment where you're working virtually, because that's going to help you avoid any unnecessary communication that might slow down your hiring process, like long email threads, too many instant messages being exchanged. And everyone's going to know what they need to do, exactly when they need to do it, who's responsible for doing. So you're going to make sure that all the tasks that are involved throughout your hiring process, they're going to be completed in a really timely manner. So you're going to continue to get candidates through your process faster. So to put together a hiring SLA, you pretty much just need to define each stage of your hiring process. And within each stage, you need to understand which tasks actually need to be completed, when do tasks need to be completed by, and which team member is going to own each task, like who is specifically going to be accountable for each task. And by mapping that out before you start hiring for a role, you're going to make sure that everyone's going to be able to hold each other accountable and be able to move candidates through your process in a really efficient manner. And then what's also super important too, that we kind of alluded to also, is that you need to make sure that you're aligning on the structure of hiring process before you even start hiring. That's what's going to really set you up for success. So really make sure you're collaborating with your hiring team and agreeing on how you're going to evaluate candidates before you start doing your job ads and really open up your hiring process. So identify which skills are going to be most important for your roles. What interview questions are you going to plan on asking that's going to help you assess if a candidate either possesses those skills or is going to be able to learn the necessary skills. And then make sure you're all in alignment on how you're going to be able to score and benchmark candidates to determine if they should make it to the next step of your process too.
Yeah, those are great points, Jeremy. Just taking the time to do so beforehand That's going to save you the headaches of having to do additional interviews, maybe having additional churn if you find out later on they didn't have the right skills. So just setting that time aside upfront is going to ultimately pay off for you. Melanie, what would you say is crucial to the success of TA strategies and the companies really need to make sure they invest their time and resources into?
I'd say first and foremost is a reliable ATS. Even if you're already contracted into one, but you find yourself doing a lot of workarounds, maybe it's time to start shopping around for something else. I went through 3 different ATSs, I think, in 3 years before I finally found Greenhouse and settled on them as a partner because they checked mostly all of my boxes. I wasn't doing workarounds anymore, and they integrated with all of the other tools that we're using that allow our TA teams to be successful. So that's kind of your home base, right? That's where you manage your prospects, nurture them, and where you can consolidate all of your efforts into one place because your talent acquisition coordinators, your hunters, right? They're sourcing all over the place, and it's great to have it in just one location, and then have your recruiters jump on and do their magic in closing the deals. So ATS is extremely important. I love that they integrate with all of our other tools. For example, I highly encourage using applications that allow for text messaging, and maybe that's integrated with your call system, or maybe it's a standalone that integrates with Greenhouse. For example, we use Grayscale. What I love about it is there's automation. Everything lives in Greenhouse at the profile level. And, candidates aren't reading emails, checking emails every 5 minutes, but you better believe they're checking their cell phones at least every 2 seconds, every time it dings. So it's a great way to reduce that time to contact when you're trying to get them to apply or schedule a phone screen, things like that. And other things that we use to integrate are Spark Hire. We utilize the one-way interviews very heavily. For one, we recruit in the entire state. So obviously we don't require people to come in for those interviews. And for some of our positions, we're hiring 40 people a week. It's really hard to, screen and interview 60, 70 people in a week's time frame with just a handful of recruiters. So we leverage Spark Hire significantly to help get us through kind of those preliminary screeners so we know if we want to advance them or not. It's a great supplemental tool to make a hiring decision. So definitely invest in things like that. Also, to Jeremy's point, there's also add-on other things you can do, creating those employee testimonials, things like that. I can't express how much employee testimonials has increased our engagement, just so they have an insight from real people, not you trying to sell them a job, about how great it is to work there. And then I said it before, but most importantly is invest in your employer branding. You have to think like that marketer, invest the time, review your analytics. Don't just post and forget. Spend time on understanding what's working for you, what's not, cut off sources that aren't working. Keep posting content that works for your audience for that specific job. It's going to pay off in the long term, especially if you're in a volatile hiring environment, right? Oh, hiring freeze. Oh, no, just kidding. I need 10 people by tomorrow. All of these things are going to help you be better prepared when you need to turn hiring back on.
Yeah, excellent points, Melanie. And I want to give a little color too to investing in strategies that have text messaging available. Spark Hire just incorporated text messaging into ours, and part of research showed that the industry standards for open rates of emails versus text messages, emails are about 21%, and text messages are in excess of 98, 99% of the time. So when you want to reach your candidates quickly, that is the absolute fastest way to do so. Now, Maria, I want to give you a chance to chime in too. What strategies do you look at and really lean into and feel are worth fighting for in those budget meetings?
Oh, yes. So just like, Jeremy and Melanie shared, in today's market, anything related to candidate experience. So whether that be tools that can help you gather qualitative feedback from your candidates so that you can better assess and diagnose where you need to apply focus, tools like that, anything that can help you provide that white glove service, lots of touch points, text messaging, things like that. Also, of course, showcasing company culture through things like video, absolutely important. I'd also double click on what Melanie shared regarding the importance of selecting and continuing to invest in an ATS. Your ATS is everything. It's what really helps you to achieve and track progress towards your goals. So you got to get that one right and keep getting it right. From a team function standpoint, I think when I think about the things that are worth continuing to invest in 2023, like all things talent planning, operations, and enablement, no matter what changes you may see in the market, no matter what changes may come to your hiring plan week by week, month by month, the ability to use data and the ability to make sure your team has what they need to do their jobs and to do their jobs effectively. That's the stuff that remains no matter what. It's kind of the glue that holds it all together. And then finally, thinking about annual budget meetings, and a lot of times when it comes to those types of conversation and you're having to make cuts, a lot of times culture can unfortunately be the first thing that gets cut off of a budget. But the reality is that's exactly the thing that you need to be investing in for your teams, because going into, especially periods of difficult times or challenges, it's important to kind of fill those love banks up, get your folks really engaged, motivated, excited, empowered, to be bought into your company's mission. So, if you have the opportunity to invest in things like offsites for your team, even just simple culture building activities from a team standpoint, I find that to be really important as well.
Yeah, things have to be always on the same page through good times and bad, and that's going to help you weather the storms, as they say. Now, we have one last question to get to with our panelists, but before we do, I want to share a poll with all of you. So I'm going to pull that up on screen. Let's see. Okay, you should be seeing that pop up now, so you can take a look on your screen. It's going to ask if you'd like to receive any information from our participating panelists. So you can just select the answer that's best for you, and we'll be sure to get you connected after the webinar ends. So I'll give everyone a moment to answer that. And then I'm also going to put in a couple of links in the chat box in case you would like to hear from Spark to Green Hire about a demo. So the first one I'll put in there is a Spark Hire link. The second one here is a greenhouse link. So you can copy those links and you can get to us at any point if you'd like to see a demo. So I'll just give another chance for everyone to answer that, and we'll move on from there.
And thanks everyone for all the engagement in the chat. You guys have had awesome questions, comments, just weighing in on your own experience. So it's been really helpful as far as just adding more value to the conversation we're having today. So thanks for engaging with us in the chat. Thanks for engaging on the poll. Check out those links Patrick just shared if you want more information. You could easily request more information from those pages too.
Excellent. Looks like most people have had a chance to answer. But if you don't answer now, we'll be able to get in touch with you afterwards as well. Okay, on to our last question here. So today we've talked quite a bit about the value of talent acquisition professionals and really developing a sound strategy for successful teams. Now, oftentimes these strategies involve the use of modern technology platforms to help them plan, execute, and measure the success of their efforts. So I want to learn about the technology that each of you uses to help your strategies succeed, that you think will help others achieve their goals moving forward. So Melanie, why don't you start us off here? Melanie, you're on mute.
Okay. Sorry, I'll probably end up repeating a lot of what I said in my previous answer, but Greenhouse is a big mover for us, and leveraging that Spark Hire integration. Like I said, we're hiring almost 40 people a week. So having that technology all in one place has been a complete time saver for us. Text messaging services, anything that integrates and helps automate your existing process, because your recruiters only have so many hands. They can only be on the phone with one person at a time. So having some added automation can increase their contact rate significantly while they're on the phone doing the phone screens. Guess what? They're checking in via text message to make sure their other interviewer showed up to their interview, and leveraging other tools out there like Indeed and LinkedIn, but also pay attention to the sourcing analytics. Just like I said, just because they're a big name and they're out there doesn't mean that they're the best fit for everybody. So I'd say it starts with ATS, ends with just protecting your company culture and employer branding. I can't stress that enough.
Awesome. Maria, what kind of tech do you find helps you keep things moving smoothly in your TA efforts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not to be duplicative, but I definitely share Melanie's sentiments around the importance of a strong ATS. And I'm obviously going to be a little biased towards Greenhouse as an ATS of choice. But, really for me, it comes down to the ability to, use strong reporting to allow my teams to be agile in adjusting processes and enabling those processes to be as smooth as possible. So an ATS with a strong reporting capability. I'm also really appreciative of having sourcing automation built natively into product. So earlier this year, Greenhouse released a sourcing automation feature where we can do all of our sourcing automation right from our ATS platform. So that certainly helped. So those are the two things that come to mind for me.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm sure having that automation helps you focus your efforts, and so you really target the things that are most effective for you. Jeremy, how about you? Can you wrap things out and tell us about your favorite TA tech?
Yeah, I can't stress enough the importance of having a really good ATS and onboarding software in place. That's going to be super important. Of course, like I've been saying, I'm a huge proponent of using video throughout the hiring and onboarding process too, whether it's video interviews to help speed up your hiring process and just make more informed decisions about next steps for your candidates, or including videos in your communication with candidates, whether that's in an email or on social media, or even putting together like a corporate Instagram page that you can link to at different points in your hiring process. But I think you'll ultimately find that's going to help you really improve your engagement with candidates, to want them to opt into the next steps in your process and get them really excited about working at your organization.
Excellent. All right. Thank you all for your thoughtful answers today. And I hope that these ideas are going to help everyone in our audience really crush their goals heading into 2023. So at this point, I do want to open up to our audience so you have a chance to ask our panelists some questions about their TA strategies and experiences. So please, if you do have additional questions for our panelists, just drop them in the chat and we're going to work on getting some of those answers for you. And I did take note of a few over the course of the webinar, and I know that we had some answers in the chat, but I want to open them up to the rest of our panelists as well. So let's see. I'm going to go back to the start. Ashley asked, how do you measure quality per hire? And I'll open this up to any of our panelists who would like to answer.
We're usually measuring that by their retention, how long they've been with the organization, and then performance records. So for example, if they're a salesperson, we try to take a look back and look at what their performance history was. And in some cases, we even try to tie that back to the source. So we'll take a look back at the last 60 days of hires and say, okay, the top 10 were sourced from X, Y, or Z, and then try to focus more on those sourcing efforts versus where your bottom 10 came from.
Jeremy or Maria, anything you'd like to chime in?
I was pretty much going to say the same thing as far as reviewing retention. And then if it is a performance-based role where there's like a target that the employee is being held to, like what percentage of your team members are actually hitting or exceeding that target. I think that is a really awesome point that Melanie just made, though, about trying to tie that back to the sources from your candidates too. That I think that'd be really interesting to take a closer look at your organization.
Cool. All right, let's move on to another question. Alyssa asks, what data do you find most impactful to share with hiring managers to gain perspective into the current market and hard to fill roles?
Yeah, I mean, I think looking at talent pool insights from if you're working in LinkedIn Recruiter, or, we work with a tool as well called Intello, and that provides us the ability to sort of see, okay, with this title in this market, what are the number of viable candidates? Intello actually has a really cool diversity filter as well. So you can actually say this many candidates in this particular market identify as female, and that's in line with the goals that we're setting from a diversity standpoint. So that type of data is good. We also do our own just kind of grassroots collection of data, especially when it comes to things like compensation. If we happen to notice misalignments in the market, really just making sure that we're collecting that data in real time and then presenting that to the relevant teams if we need to make adjustments there.
Excellent. We got quite a few questions, so I'm just going to roll through a little bit more. If anyone wants to jump in with follow-ups, feel free. All right. Chelsea asks, in a time when tech employment world seems to be shifting, how are you driving sustainable transformation in your TA organizations?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think over the last few years, mainly just caused by the pandemic and the overall shift to working in a more virtual environment for companies that maybe weren't doing as much of that before, it kind of like forced everyone to get in the mindset of thinking of strategies to not just basically overcome those challenges, but understanding like what the future of work is going to be like. And as everyone was tinkering with their strategies, it gave them a chance to really think more long term about what are sustainable strategies to not just overcome these challenges right now, but ones that are actually going to last and be able to be pretty much like evergreen strategies. Obviously, you're always going to tinker with your strategies, but I think just always approaching it from that mindset of like, okay, I need to figure out a solution that not only addresses the challenge or improvement that we need to overcome or address right now, but that's also going to open us up to be something that is more sustainable, that is going to be a long-term strategy too.
Great. Thanks, Jeremy. All right. Next, we have Brianna asks, I'd love to hear tips on how us TA folks can really sell our leaders on getting better ATSs. I find we get pushback on value to cost.
Was it Melanie that replied in the chat?
Yeah, I posted to that one and I had a similar issue. And the way that I really you have to make a business case, right? So the way that I did that was I identified what all of our time robbers were, right? How much time is your team spending on manual things right now that can be replaced with a technology solution? Are your people spending 6 hours a day loading manual resumes into the platform instead of talking to candidates? Mine were. So I was like, that's not going to work. For one, our company's evolving, we're getting bigger, and this little bitty ATS that will remain unnamed isn't sufficient enough for the capacity that we're trying to do and the way we're trying to scale. So, also positioning it, just try to quantify that into where is it lacking and how is it impacting your team negatively. And sometimes it's hard because, again, we're not revenue generating directly, it's indirect. So just quantifying that in terms of man hours. So man hours is money. So if your team is wasting hours and days on things that can be replaced by just a good ATS, then that's a really good business case to have. And then letting them know how that impacts your overall headcount budget too. So I won't need 10 recruiters. I'll need 8 great ones because all they'll be doing is calling, selling our company. So that's something that I struggled with in the beginning, but ultimately that's probably what sealed the deal.
That's great feedback. And I want to give you a chance, Maria, to answer if you want, seeing as you're with Greenhouse.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I feel like I couldn't have said it better than Melanie. We at Greenhouse, of course, we didn't have any convincing to do to use our own ATS, but I think that's exactly how I would tackle the problem, though. I mean, it's literally quantifiable if you look at what your recruiters are doing right now and what they could be doing instead, and then putting some basically dollars to that amount should help make that pretty compelling case.
Awesome. All right, I have one other question left here. Do you have any tips on bridging the gap between the TA teams and HR/onboarding teams and organizations where the recruiters work on the front end, because it can seem like different cultures at times?
I actually have a great one for that one. What we found was that everybody knows each other somewhat. They know the names, they see the names on emails, but nobody actually knows what everybody else does at the company. So we did a massive lunch and learn that combined recruiting, talent acquisition, HR, onboarding, and kind of did a presentation on this is what the heck I do every day, and this is how it ties in with what you're doing. And then on top of that, we kind of made it mixer style, obviously. So lunch provided, I encourage, if you are in office, do some happy hours together. I know people do team outings, maybe do a combined team outing to get to know each other a little bit better. From a virtual capacity, we also we did a bunch of Teams chat groups that we call like sanity checks. So, people from the organization can post them. There'll be a topic for the day, like what's your favorite Thanksgiving Day side dish or something, and it just triggers a whole conversation. And you're getting to inadvertently know more about your team, so that could help with that culture piece, because it can feel like a different culture because the type of work is completely different. Recruiting is very different from onboarding, but people from the outside think it's the same thing. They're like, it's HR. Aren't you all HR? No, actually, we're not. We have completely different functions. And I think that lunch and learn, where everybody from every team got to create their own presentation, gave a ton of visibility and a ton of respect to your teammates about what they're actually doing every day. From down to, did you know that I spend this much time on your payroll to make sure you get paid on time? And recruiting is sharing, hey, did you know that I have to do 60 interviews a week to get one hire? Things like that, just so everybody has a better appreciation of what everybody else does.
Yeah, that's all super good information for background on it. So thank you, Melanie. We're just about at time, but we had one last question for Core that I want to pitch with another concept too. He asked if we had any templates for starting an SLA, and I think that really ties into the question about transparency of the process. And I think that goes both internally and externally. So does one of you want to speak about just what you do to keep your TA strategy clear and transparent, both to internal stakeholders as well as your applicants?
Sure, I can speak to that. So speaking about it from an internal stakeholder standpoint, certainly what we do, of course, I think like any recruiter, when we're kicking off a role, we go really in depth in making sure there's a lot of alignment about exactly what that process is going to look like, what we can expect together each step of the way. On top of that, even prior to that kickoff meeting, every single one of our hiring managers goes through a hiring manager training with our team, where we sort of look at it from more of a high level perspective so they can know what to expect, and mainly also what we expect of them in partnering with our team. So all of that is there. There's also internal resources. Right now, we're actually in the process of rolling out a really exciting new project, our Hiring Manager Hub. That's essentially going to be an internal hiring manager facing resource that provides resources for our hiring managers each and every step of the recruiting process. So we're really excited about that. And then from an external standpoint, transparency is super important. So on our careers page, we have a specific page called Interviewing at Greenhouse, where we outline what to expect each step of the way in the recruiting process. We have also recently overhauled all of our email templates to make sure that transparency and clarity of process remains clear there too. So just making sure kind of, again, each step of the way that everyone knows what to expect.
Awesome. Thanks, Maria. And Jeremy, I saw you were typing some answers. Anything you wanted to chime in there?
I think Maria gave a really great response, and I think it's so important to really outline the steps of your hiring process so a candidate knows exactly what to expect at the point that they're applying. And to go along with that, make sure you're committing on a timeline of when they should expect to hear back from you again. And it's totally natural and normal that you're not going to be able to hit the timeline at a stage in your process. You're not going to be able to get back to them by the end of the week or whenever you said it would be. But make sure you send a quick update email to them just to let them know, you know what, we don't have a decision on next steps right now, but I'll be in touch with you again on Tuesday with more information. So keep candidates updated on when they should expect to hear back from you again.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeremy. All right, we're right about at time, so that's going to wrap it up for now. But please do feel free to contact our panelists later if you think of any other questions after we're done here today. So once again, thank you so much for attending today's webinar. Thank you to our panelists, Maria, Melanie, and Jeremy. And you can see we have some contact information for you here on the screen, so please don't hesitate to reach out to you. And we will get this webinar recording emailed out to each of you. And we hope to see you at the next Spark Hire webinar. So have a great day, everyone, and thanks so much.